is they run hunter edge horses. They also do fishing derbies all throughout the state. The Federation gave $10,000 to the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department for the purchase of land abutting the Kehoe camp in Bombazine when that land came on the market. We've been involved in a lawsuit we filed last year right after the signing of S-55. On February 12th, we had our first hearing on that at the Washington County Superior Court, and this will continue to go through the court process, but we're challenging the legality of the magazine ban of S-55. And folks may not know this, but the Federation has been amicus party participants in joining with all the other NRA state associations in filing before the United States Supreme Court in Heller and the Washington, D.C. case in 2008, and McDonald before the Supreme Court involving Washington, D.C. in 2010. And just recently, we joined in an amicus brief to the United States Supreme Court on a New Jersey case seeking certiorari before the court. On Thursday, we're going to have a forum down in Rutland in the Franklin Room of the House Center. We're going to have speakers there. We're going to be talking about gun rights around the nation, but in the state of Vermont. Darren will be one of the speakers. And the point is that it's not hard to see what happens if we don't stand up for what we have here now. What we have here now, we will not pass along to the generations that come after us from what we inherited from the generations that came before us. So that's going on Thursday night down in Rutland. We do these things all the time. We've been in these amicus briefs. They aren't free, they have to be done, and we have to raise the money to do it. So we got tractor raffle tickets over here, and wouldn't you like to ride home on a tractor? All right, thank you very much. Oh, by the way, we have websites now, and if you want to go on and check on the status of legislation or the status or track the lawsuits, you can do it right through our website. Thank you.
We're down to 3 speakers, and just to follow up on a comment that Darren Goins made, that being a patriot and a constitutionalist is crosses party lines. I'd like to have the...
We will own the fee increases if we can save that fish hatchery. And so I don't want to hear anybody complaining if your license goes up $2. I'm willing to pay it. I hope you're willing to pay it, because if we lose that fish hatchery, we lose millions of dollars of economic impact to the state of Vermont. Fishermen come here. If they don't catch fish, they're not coming back. Fishermen spend millions of dollars every year in the state of Vermont. If we go to the gun issues in S-55, I strongly opposed it. It's a terrible bill. I hope we win in the courts, but I'm not waiting for the court. I put in several bills. It was a terrible bill constructed by amendment on the floor instead of the committee process. What we ended up with, folks, is we outlawed all competitions in Vermont. Basically, they won't come here anymore. And we know a bunch of our clubs, whether it's a gun range or fish and wildlife clubs, they make a ton of their money, a bunch of them, on these competitions. And so I have a bill in to allow the competitions. None of these guys have ever presented a problem. They're serious shooters, serious about their sport, serious about gun safety, and I'm going to try to get that back to the state of Vermont. I think it's extremely important. Number 2, my kid in the military, currently serving, cannot bring his firearms legally back to Vermont. And I think that's a slap in the face to people who are serving our country today.
Yeah.
Number 3, we know that the Montpelier City Police tried to get Block 17s and couldn't after the law passed, which is great. Our police now can't get the weapons they want. I think they corrected that. But what they haven't corrected is if we call for mutual aid from a police department from another state, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, if they cross Vermont state lines, they are in violation of the law. If they have a Glock 17, if they have an AR-15 with a 20-round magazine, they're in violation of the law. Again, you cannot build things on the floor by amendment and have a coherent, logical, common sense bill. The one that offends me the most, though, is that I can hand my ARs down to my children, but I can't give them legally the magazines that go with those firearms. And I have a bill to correct that too. The anti-gun advocates are going common sense all the time. These are all common sense measures. But everybody needs to reach out to their representatives and senators.
You need to
and say,
plug in.
Mistakes were made. We need to correct them. We can do it without you. We're in the minority now, folks. We have to stand up. Quite frankly, I know there's a lot of women in the crowd, and it's fabulous to see you. But if you are a gun-owning white man in Vermont, we are now the only class of people that it's okay to discriminate against. And I think it is the new implicit bias, because there is a divide between new Vermonters and old Vermonters. And when I say that, I don't care where you are from. But when I was growing up, people were moving here because they shared our values, because they wanted to be like us. The demographics have shifted. People are moving here to the urban areas. They didn't grow up with guns. They didn't grow up around guns. They're afraid of guns. So we have that giant challenge in front of us. And what we have to try to do is say, don't discriminate against good people because they believe something different than you. I have been, in my whole legislative career, stuck up for every minority ever, because I don't think anybody should be discriminated against. I don't care what your race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, but now they seem to be okay with law-abiding gun owners being discriminated against. And I think that's wrong, and I think we need to call them on it. But we need...
We also need candidates in all 14 counties to start running in opposition.
We've still got a huge number of people on the couch. I don't know how we get them, but we have to get everybody in our community to get off the couch, get involved, get out and vote, and we've got to recruit good, solid, moderate people who support second right Article 16. Thank you. Thank you.
In Vermont, we are not alone, just having single
Nicely said, John.
like John Rogers. Alice Snetka has always looked very favorably on constitutional issues. Dick Sears. Just because you're a Democrat does not mean you can't be on our side. Don't throw anything at me. Mr. Brennan. We're not getting off the hook with Mr. Pat Brennan.
Hi.
Hi. You're going to sit down and drink beer. I acknowledge Pat Brennan. Pat Brennan has not one but two bills for suppressing law hunting, and I believe Mr. John Rogers, did you submit one on the Senate side? Interesting that Pat came in and wanted suppressors for hunting. That's basically the name of the bill. Someone must have got to her, because you got to make a health issue out of this. So, now, save your hearing while hunting, or something like that.
It's the Hearing Protection Act.
The Hearing Protection Act. Unless I've missed anybody, I'd like to conclude. A very close friend of mine, we worked hard on the Berlin Pond. He has been a delegate to the Federation. He is now the director of the Vermont Traditions Coalition, an organization we're proud to stand with and has stood for traditions and the heritage of Vermont. Mike, would you like to come up and just give a couple, an introduction, if nothing else? Mike Tucker.
Hi everyone. First I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight, and I kind of want to echo something that Senator Rogers said, and that's the importance of engagement. And it's not enough to just be here tonight and be engaged. You need to get out there, get out with your circles of friends and get them to engage. Through this, through any process that we go through, whether we're supporting or opposing a bill, and coming up to the next elections, it's going to be very crucial. There are more forces arrayed against us than just the anti-gun groups. There are anti-hunting, anti-trapping groups that are a relatively recent phenomenon on the scale that we're seeing them in the state of Vermont. Around February of 2015 was when this phenomenon first cropped up in its current form, and they've been very aggressive. We're fortunate right now. There are a couple of bills out. There's nothing really moving yet, but one of the bills that's been released could be very damaging to conservation as we know it and as we practiced it for the last 100+ years. And so it's just crucial. And one of the ways that we see this working, thank you to everybody who engaged the Salisbury issue. You know, we had a great deal of engagement from the governor, with Secretary Moore through the beginning of last week. On Wednesday, the governor and his administration graciously invited a number of us to come sit down with them and try to work out a solution. I think that we're working well in that direction. It's still a moving process, so it's not a done deal yet. But we have the conversation started, and the reason we got the conversation started is because we got engagement from the community. There are a lot of folks out there, a lot of your friends, I'm sure you've heard them say that my vote doesn't count. Call them out on it. Their vote does count. Their votes count, their phone calls count, their emails count, and that's how we can get things done. So I can't stress enough how important that is. I'll talk briefly on Salisbury, and I won't get too deep into the weeds, but the realities of this closure, the implications of it are significant. Right now, the Roxbury Hatchery down, trout production is down about 10% in the state. If Salisbury goes down as well, that's going to reduce it by 35% until Roxbury is up and running, and it'll be a 25% reduction into the foreseeable future. There are permit issues that might preclude even ramping up any further production at our existing facilities because they're already operating at near the thresholds for discharge, etc. So the value of Salisbury is more significant perhaps than it may seem on the surface. On top of that, it's the hatchery that gets the most tourism in any annual year. It gets about 7,000 visitors a year, which is a significant draw towards that community. Beyond that, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I want everybody to take that message home, that when you call, it matters. When you email, it matters. And take it home, and the next time you're sitting down with your buddies around the wood stove or in the fishing shanty, talk to them about that. Because there's nothing more crucial that we can do than just improving our participation as a community.
Mike, thank you so much. Okay, I think that's our speakers. Bill, did you want to say something?
I want to add an anecdote from last year. We talk a lot about getting candidates, showing up to vote. Turnout was dismal, and I think at least in part because we weren't motivated to get out to speak to the top of the ticket with our vote, so we didn't show up. Our friends didn't show up for those farther down the ticket. I've been coming to this building since the 80s, and there's always just one little tear in the corner of my eye because I know when I walk in this building that this is so rare to be able to walk into a legislative building where they're not hiding behind a secretary or an office. They don't have professional staff. They rely on folks like us who are knowledgeable within our community, advocates that are speaking from experience. And that's a powerful thing. Anybody you know from another state, almost without exception, will tell you, wow, I can't believe it. I can't even walk in the door in New York State and Albany without having an appointment just to get on the floor and listen to the floor debate. Having said all that, last year I shed some different tears. On March 23rd, when we voted on S55, the very first vote was a motion by Paul Poirier, again a Democrat and a longtime supporter of gun rights, to force the Speaker and the leadership of this building, particularly the House, to hold a public hearing on that bill, that monumental bill. I mean, it was a gravitational shift in how this state approaches our gun rights and trusts us lawful owners. And that vote failed. After being refused a public hearing by the Speaker, still in her office, we still couldn't get the public hearing from the floor of that body. If you could say one thing, even to some that voted for S55, ask them why. Why would you be afraid to hold a mass public hearing? And I'll tell you the answer, they won't tell you. Because we show up 8, 9, 10 to 1 at every one of these public hearings. And last year we were denied that very important moment. And I think that was the beginning of something we could turn around. Because if we don't, it'll be the death of this citizen legislature. It'll be the death of that access that I got a feeling some of us are taking for granted. So demand public hearings this year on any of these bills. And demand that they give you access to testify in the committee, in the chair, no matter how much of their precious time it takes. Thank you.
The wild signal, Pat, did you have something to say now?
It's time for a commercial break, and I'd like to I forgot to mention that the Legislative Sportswomen's Caucus, April 4th, here in the cafeteria. You've all been to it before. We do a few raffles and stuff. Just wanted to mention that. We have more legislators at this, probably 30, 35 members of the caucus. We're still signing up new members, but we would appreciate your support. It's the same time, 4:30 to 7:30, 8 o'clock. Again, raffles, munchies, cash bar. We need you here to talk to your legislators. It'll be a great venue similar to this, and you gotta be here to talk to us.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to wrap up with two things. First of all, how many veterans are in this room? Would you be so kind as to stand up and be recognized? Should have been first on the list. But the only other thing is, as Mr. Goins mentioned, you actually have 3 Washington County wannabe senators in this room, 4, I believe, well, not 3. I believe we have Lawrence Zupan with us. Lawrence, are you here? There he is. Again, we're going to try to stay away from being political here, as the Federation usually does. But I wanted to recognize Lawrence Zupan. I wanted to recognize Edwin Chabert. I wanted to recognize Ken Alger, the gentleman that I ran with in the Senate, Barry Wadley. Barry Wadley here.
Randy Gray, Windsor County.
Bill Huff.
Thank you, Randy. Anybody did I miss?
Huff. Bill Huff.
Bill, man. I'm nothing special. If I can stick my neck out and go running around and trying to convince people to vote for me, you can too. And the fact that we have people running for office unopposed is appalling. Stick your foot out there, get in the game. So I'm not going to go any further because we're trying to stay apolitical, but support the people that are trying to push forward your rights. Thank you very, very much.